Hello there everyone, I'm in Meiringen in the Bernese Oberland, and in this town you don't need to be a famous detective to find Sherlock. Whilst it's fairly well known that Sherlock and Moriarty plunged to their apparent deaths at the Reichenbach Falls not far from here, it did get me thinking, what brought Holmes and Watson and Moriarty to Meiringen in the first place? And where were they going? I thought I'd follow in their footsteps and see where I ended up. For a charming week we wandered up the valley of the Rhone, and then, branching off at Leuch, we made our way over the Gemmi Pass, still deep in snow, and so, by way of Interlaken, to Meiringen. Despite its fearful appearance, there is actually a serviceable path up to the top of the Gemmi Pass from Leukerbad. It's steep, but it doesn't have any technical difficulties. Fortunately, though, I have access to a shortcut that wasn't available to Holmes and Watson. In the homely alpine villages, or in the lonely mountain passes, I could tell by his quick glancing eyes and his sharp scrutiny of every face that passed us, that he was well convinced that, walk where we would, we could not walk ourselves clear of the danger which was dogging our footsteps. Once, I remember, as we passed over the Gemmi and walked along the border of the melancholy Dorbansee, a large rock which had been dislodged from the ridge upon our right clattered down and roared into the lake behind us. In an instant, Holmes had raced up onto the ridge, and standing upon a lofty pinnacle, craned his neck in every direction. It was in vain that our guide assured him that a fall of stones was a common chance in the springtime at that spot. He said nothing, but he smiled at me with the air of a man who sees the fulfilment of that which he had expected. The charming funicular at the Reichenbach Falls opened in 1899, some 6 years after Conan Doyle took his famous fictional detective to the same spot. Once again, I've got the opportunity to take a shortcut. It was on the 3rd of May that we reached the little village of Meiringen, where we put up at the Englischerhof, then kept by Peter Steiler the Elder. Our landlord was an intelligent man and spoke excellent English, having served for 3 years as a waiter at the Grosvenor Hotel in London. At his advice, on the afternoon of the 4th we set off together with the intention of crossing the hills and spending the night at the hamlet of Rosenlaui. We had strict injunctions, however, on no account to pass the falls of Reichenbach, which are about halfway up the hill, without making a small detour to see them. It is indeed a fearful place. The torrent, swollen by the melting snow, plunges into a tremendous abyss, from which the spray rolls up like the smoke from a burning house. The shaft into which the river hurls itself is an immense chasm, lined by the glistening coal-black rock, and narrowing into a creaming, boiling pit of incalculable depth, which brims over and shoots the stream onward over its jagged lip. The long sweep of green water roaring forever down, and the thick flickering curtain of spray hissing forever upward, turning a man giddy with their constant whirl and clamour. We stood near the edge, peering down at the gleam of the breaking water far below us against the black rocks, and listening to the half-human shout, which came booming up with the spray out of the abyss. So Sherlock never made it to Rosenlaui, but if he had managed to avoid confrontation with Moriarty at the Reichenbach Falls, what would he have found there? Well, the Rosenlaui Hotel dates from 1862, so he would definitely have found somewhere to put his head down for the night. He would also have been able to experience the fantastic view of the Kleine Wellhorn and the Wellhorn towering above the flowing waters of the Reichenbach, although that spot has been Instagrammed to death, not something that Holmes would have been too worried about in 1891 though. Finally, he would have been able to explore the Rosenlaui Glacier Gorge. It's fiendishly difficult to film, but let's give it a go.